The scandal over the IRS targeting of conservative groups got new life this week. We learned a computer hard drive belonging to Lois Lerner, the former IRS official at the center of the controversy, reportedly crashed back in 2011, destroying 2 years of emails crucial to the investigation. That led to IRS Commissioner John Koskinen facing some very angry congressmen this week. Joining us now, the attorney representing some of the conservative groups suing the IRS, Cleta Mitchell, and a former top Democratic House staffer, Julian Epstein. So let's start with the case of the missing emails. And here is the very testy exchange this week between the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee and the IRS commissioner. Take a look.
What I didn't hear in that was an apology to this committee.
I don't think an apology is owed. Not a single email has been lost since the start of this investigation.
Cleta, the IRS, and Koskinen says that Lois Lerner asked the IRS to try to recover, to fix, to go through her email once it crashed, as soon as it crashed in 2011. And they say they have been able, by going to other people that the emails were sent to recover 67,000 of the emails she was involved in. So I guess the question is, what's your beef?
Well, there are several beefs. Let's start with the fact that the number of emails doesn't matter. Because if there were 200,000 or 2 million, what matters is that the Committee on House Oversight asked on June 9th of 2013, June 4th of 2013, sent a letter asking for all of the emails of Lois Lerner specifically. In August, when they hadn't gotten a response, they issued a subpoena. They reissued that subpoena to Koskinen when he was named commissioner late last year. And if you go back and look at the testimony, the hearing where he testified in March, the committee repeatedly, the members asked him about Lois Lerner's emails. When are you going to give us Lois Lerner's emails? He testified Friday that he knew as early as February about this computer glitch. What I think is appalling is that they have not answered the question. They didn't tell us. They didn't tell us a year ago. And I also want to say that I don't believe, I'm with Paul Ryan, I don't believe him. They should have come forward about this a year ago. There should have been a lot more investigation than what we've heard.
I want to pick up on what Cleta is saying, Julian, because here is why a lot of people are so suspicious. And take a look at this timeline that we've put together. June 3rd, 2011. Chairman Camp, House Ways and Means, asks the IRS about the targeting of conservative groups seeking tax-exempt status. June 13th, just 10 days later, Lerner reports that her hard drive has crashed. February 2013, IRS realizes that the emails are missing. At least that's what they say. June 13th, 2014, the IRS finally tells Congress. Julian, I guess two questions. How do you explain this 4-month delay between when the IRS says they knew the emails were missing and when they finally told Congress? And how do you explain this apparent coincidence that it is 10 days after Congress starts asking about the emails that Lois Lerner says, the hard drive has crashed?
So let me say, I think any time you have targeting of any group by the IRS, it's inappropriate. I think an apology in that instance is warranted. I think any time when you have emails missing in the course of an investigation, it's a problem. I think the idea that there is some cover-up, the way some Republicans are suggesting, I think is nonsense. The timing was coincidental, and I think perhaps unfortunate.
How do you know that?
Well, the timing, the outline that you just suggested, but there is nobody that suggests, Chris, that there was any bad faith involved in the computer crash. When the computer crashed, Lois Lerner.
You think there may have been bad faith?
Let me finish my point, if I may. When the computer crashed, Lois Lerner immediately went to the IT professionals at IRS. The IRS IT professionals all confirmed that. They all confirmed they went to extraordinary lengths to try to recover that information.
But the truth of the matter is we don't know that. We have a few emails that were selectively produced that show that she was, let me tell you what, if that had been my hard drive and that had happened, I would have been a little more outraged than she appeared to be. But here are some other questions. I've had IRS employees who have emailed me this week who said all of their servers are not, it's not one little computer in Washington, that there are servers in 3 different places in the United States. The IRS has a contract with a professional email archiving company. I want to know why the FBI has not stepped forward and said what they have done to try to bring in their very sophisticated capabilities to understand what happened. So I don't think that we can say that there was
Let me just finish a point. During the Bush administration, the Valerie Plame investigation, a contributor on this network came on to concede that 5 million emails may have been lost by the White House. During the course of the U.S. Attorney investigation, emails were misplaced. During the course of the torture memo investigation, emails were lost. This is not the first time this has happened. I think the question is, and the question for Cleta, is there any demonstration of any bad faith here? All of the evidence shows that there isn't.
You asked a question. Let's get a quick answer because I want to move on to something else.
I don't think we know the answer to that. I think there is bad faith in that this should have been known a year ago. It was known to the IRS a year ago, and it should have been disclosed a year ago.
Okay, let me move on to another subject, and frankly, the bottom line subject. One of the groups, Cleta, that you represent, suing the IRS, is a group called True the Vote, which sought tax-exempt status back in 2010. The IRS finally favored and granted their application in 2013, 3 years
after we sued them.
Right, after you sued them.
On the day they were to answer.
I understand your outrage.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people understand the outrage that it takes 3 years for that. But do you have any hard evidence that either the White House or the Obama campaign ordered the targeting of any conservative group?
Absolutely. All you have to do is look at the report that the House Oversight Committee posted on its website, and they have a new website that has all of this information. And if you look at the timeline, and now I understand why the Democrats have been trying to shut down this information.
Get to the point. Do you have any hard evidence?
That because the president and members of Democratic senators and Democratic House members were beating on the IRS, demanding that the IRS do something to stop these conservative and Tea Party groups.
Who inside the White House, Cleta, and who inside Treasury did this?
The President of the United States went around the country giving speeches.
That is not hard evidence. I mean, Chris is asking you a specific question, and you are not answering the question.
Well, let me ask you this.
No, the
pertinent time period that we would know whether there was such direct evidence has been conveniently lost.
Let me try to answer the question.
Julian, Can I respond let me do the interview, okay? Because I want to ask you about President Obama, who was as outraged initially as Cleta Mitchell was about the whole IRS scandal.
Appropriately so.
But watch how his attitude changed over the next few months. Take a look.
I've reviewed the Treasury Department watchdog's report, and the misconduct that it uncovered is inexcusable. But with this endless parade of distractions and political posturing and phony scandals, Washington's taken its eye off the ball.
There were some boneheaded decisions
out
of a
but no mass corruption.
Not even mass corruption, not even a smidgen of corruption.
Julian, how does inexcusable misconduct become a phony scandal and then not a smidgen of corruption?
If you simply look at the Inspector General report, I think the Inspector General report says essentially the same thing.
The Inspector General never did an investigation. He did an audit.
I think the Inspector General...
he was responding, when he responded initially to the inexcusable misconduct, it was after the Inspector General's report.
I think that's correct. And I think the Inspector General...
There's never been, for all of the referral to the Justice Department, there has never been a criminal investigation of this. So how can the President say that there's not a smidgen of corruption? What's the basis for that?
Because I think the Inspector General report and the committee investigation has essentially left every stone unturned, no stone unturned. Let me try to delineate some basic facts here. The Inspector General report and all of the evidence shows that this was initiated by a low-level Republican staffer in a Cincinnati office.
That is not true.
Let me finish the point, if I may, without interruption. That on two occasions, senior officials in the IRS slapped down this effort to target, and it was inappropriate, conservative groups. That there is no evidence whatsoever that the White House or the Treasury Department was involved in this?
You've made a point. I think it's a fair point. Cleta, how do you respond?
It's not true. I mean, if you look at the interviews that have been posted, the information, this all was a result of a response by the IRS and high-ranking officials in the IRS. I mean, look, I dealt with Lois, Lerner, among others. And the fact of the matter is they were concerned about the Citizens United decision and the political pressure that was being brought to bear on all of these civil service employees, and they were trying to, quote, do something. We just learned, because the investigation has been allowed to continue, we just learned in the last 2 months that Lois Lerner sent the data, a database of 12,000 citizens organizations to the FBI for possible criminal investigations.
I got 30 seconds left. I have one last question for Cleta. I'm sorry, but I just want to ask you this. Where does the scandal go from here? How do you think that the missing email should be handled? And how do we get to the bottom of if there was anyone above and beyond Lois Lerner who is responsible for targeting these groups?
Well, we have to be able to look at emails outside of the IRS. That's one thing that the IRS commissioner has not been forthcoming about. We're going to be meeting and conferring with the lawyers for the Justice Department, the Justice Department lawyers for the IRS and Lois Lerner this week, and our lawsuit. And I doubt we'll get very far. We will ask the court to order an independent forensic investigation, and maybe the lawsuits are the only way we're going to get to the bottom of this.
I'll give you 10 seconds. Final word.
There is no evidence that the White House or senior Treasury officials were involved in this. This was started by a Republican staffer inside a Cincinnati office. The senior officials at IRS twice slapped this process down. Democrats were investigated as well. Critics have never shown that there is anything approaching a serious scandal here involving political officials, even if the targeting was admittedly inappropriate.
Cleta, Julian, thank you both. To be continued, and we, of course, will stay on top of this.